Hey guys, welcome to the Badaboom podcast. This is Chris.
And this is Troy.
And today, like many of our podcasts, we're talking DC because this is the official DC podcast, it seems. But, in recent times, DC's been through a lot of ups, a lot of downs. And just recently, the Discovery Warner Brothers merger is now official. It has gone through, it's passed all the regulatory hurdles, and it's official. Now AT&T is no longer kind of spearheading Warner, and now it's Warner Brothers Discovery. The new logo is not as bad as the one they had when they first announced it, but still not great. Still not great.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, but kind of why we're talking is there's a recent article in Variety talking about DC and the strategy and what Discovery thinks of that strategy. And from reading that article, it seems like they're not happy with what's going on with DC. And it's more of just like an overall strategy. It's not particularly like the movies, the TV, the games, or the comic books. It's really that all of this seems to lack any coherent strategy. And I don't think you need a brand specialist, an MBA, or anyone with any expertise to see that, yes, there is no strategy. And reading this, what did you think, Troy?
I got kind of hesitant at first because I was seeing something where I was like, oh, this sounds like they're gonna kind of just turn DC loose and sell it off and have it be its own company. But after I read further into it, I was like, okay, it sounds like they're actually trying to have a plan and they want to have something that's unified across everything, because you and I both know, and most of our listeners will probably know, that if you see something on the CW, it's not going to be anything that's going to have to do with a movie or a comic book or a video game. It's just out there doing its own thing, except for that one time Ezra Miller showed up. So it's going to be nice to see, okay, if I watch this, it's going to apply to so many other things, hopefully, and it's going to create stronger storytelling and a lot more of a powerful brand, hopefully, for different characters.
To pick up on the Ezra Miller thing you talked about, funny, I think in the same crossover, it was a Crisis on Infinite Earths thing, they wiped out the Batman 89 universe in that series. And now in the Flash movie, guess where we're going? The 89 universe with Michael Keaton's Batman. So it just goes to show you that there is no plan. The comics have tried to address that. Last year with Death Metal, you had the unveiling of the Omniverse, and in fandom they talked about it, where basically all these takes of these characters all matter. They're all happening at the same time. It's all continuity. It all makes sense. And yeah, I guess if you're putting a name to it, maybe it sounds like a strategy, but it sounds like more like an excuse that you don't know what you're doing. And you're just going along.
Yeah. And like, you can kind of do whatever you want with the comics, in my opinion. And you can be very innovative there without having too many boundaries. It's kind of like what we said before in our last episode. Superhero movies, more so video game movies, they can do something new, but still pay like respects and whatnot to what's happened in the past from like the source material. So like, different things can happen in the movies, and, I'll get super pumped about them, and they'll probably be tied in some way to previous versions of the comics. But I think like if we're making a modern day Batman comic or our current Green Lantern series or something, or current Flash, do as much crazy stuff as you want. And then I'll say, oh, wow, maybe I'm really stoked to see that in a movie one day. I don't think you really needed to have it tile back together, because that's like the original format, and we can kind of pick and choose because there's so many years of comics to pull from to say, all right, this will be in the movie or this won't be in the movie.
Going back to the lack of strategy, I think what's really powerful in the article is how they talk about how, yes, Marvel is definitely more successful when it comes to brand synergy, this plan, and also just overall success. But why Discovery is so upset is that characters like Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, they all have better global brand recognition than the Marvel characters. And what's sad is, and it says it in the article, it's like characters like Superman have been left to languish. That is actually like the word used in the article. It's like he's been left to languish. And, if you think about it, like imagine if Marvel, Sony, for 5 years, well, when did Batman v Superman come out? No, now Justice League. So Justice League, the last theatrical release that had Superman in it, that was 2017. That was 5 years ago. Imagine Sony waiting 5 years in this day and age to do something with Spider-Man.
Yeah, but that's kind of also, I'm going to blame Henry Cavill a little bit because he signed that contract with Netflix and they have the rights to his face for years. But at the same time, if Warner Brothers really wanted to have him, they should have said, hey, we're going to look over all your contracts or something.
To be honest, it didn't stop them from making a Batman movie without like Ben Affleck. Like they could make more. They could have made another Superman movie if they really wanted to. Also, it didn't stop them from doing a Superman and Lois show. And now they have two concurrent, like, or maybe even three at this point, Superman projects in development. And it's like, why aren't these a priority? Why aren't these getting made? And part of it, I will say, yes, this company has now changed hands twice in less than 5 years, which I'm sure is chaotic for the people that work there. It's hard to build a strategy when, like, for example, the people that took over during the AT&T takeover, they're probably not going to be there. So it's like, hey, the things they put together, the things that are in the Flash that are supposed to be the start of a new DC universe, by the time that movie comes out, DC might have its version of Kevin Feige that might say, you know what? None of this makes sense. I'm finally making the call on Ezra Miller. We're firing him, or firing them.
About time.
So it's like one of those things. It sucks because we've all worked a job. No one likes, the new boss to come in and be like, hey, you guys all suck. You guys should probably leave. We're going to get someone new to bring in some new ideas. But as a fan, you're kind of like ready for certain people to be held accountable for the lack of strategy when it's like, no one's saying you have to be as successful as Marvel. But the fact where like DC has become kind of like a punchline where they have an advantage, like even if you look at Marvel, they had to start their cinematic universe with their B and C characters because they didn't have the rights to their A-listers like the X-Men, like Spider-Man, like the Fantastic Four. And they still figured out a way to build that. And like with DC, all the characters are under one roof. There's no like, hey, we have to do this or do that. They could really deliver like a crazy universe if they wanted to. But it seems like they lack the vision. They lack maybe the people that work there to really bring something that's interesting. And, to be honest, sometimes with that brand synergy, you're going to lose things. You know what I mean? We probably don't get the Batman with a Kevin Feige type. We probably don't get the Joker or Peacemaker. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach it because in the article, it does say that they want more hits like the Joker, things that leverage characters that are not necessarily like Batman and Superman. But in the same breath, it's like, hey, this has to make sense. And right now, none of this makes sense.
Yeah. And you got a solid point about like Iron Man was not an A-lister character back before the movie came out.
I used to dread watching the Iron Man cartoon as a kid. And as a kid, I would find any excuse to watch any type of cartoon. I remember watching the Iron Man cartoon as a kid and being like, this sucks. Like, I was only like really watching it because I love War Machine on the cartoon. Like, I guess for it was the first voice I ever recognized because Uncle Phil played him. So I always like, I guess when I watched it, I was like, one, he looks cool. Two, I know that voice.
Yeah.
So that was the only reason I'd watch that. But it sucked compared to like the Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man, the animated series, and X-Men, the animated series. And they somehow made that work. And now, a decade plus later, 20 plus movies and shows later, we're looking at, and I'm a DC guy, so it's kind of sad, you know what I mean? It's like being a Mets fan in New York, where you see the Yankees win all the time. You're like, fuck.
Could have been us, should be us. Yeah, but I think that DC does have enough of those lower level heroes, per se, to make a comeback. It's just tough when you have a large amount of your bread and butter, of your biggest team, or your most well-known team, is Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman that's been tied up through different actors throughout the years. But they could still reboot it. And, there's still some not the best taste in your mouth from the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern. But I think Green Lantern is the only character of the Justice League we haven't seen in recent years on television or on movies, even animated properties.
And that goes to show you just the lack of strategy. Like, how long ago? Actually, one of the first HBO Max series that was announced, like at their like big presentation, was a Green Lantern show, and we still haven't gotten that, and we probably are not gonna get that. And it's been 11 years since that Green Lantern movie. No one could crack a script. You know, when you look at June, yes, that was a great movie, loved it, but it's an auteur film about a book that needs to be split up into two. No one could have used that money and figured out a way to make a Green Lantern movie. No one. Make it a priority. Same thing with Flash. Flash, there's no reason it should have taken this long to figure out a Flash movie. The Flash has been successful on TV for like 10 years at this point. Why is one of the Justice Leaguers, like in the case of Marvel, it makes sense why we haven't seen the X-Men yet. They're like, all right, we have to figure out a way to bring them into this universe. We have to like handle it delicately. Also, we have to figure out how to, you know, wipe people's memory of the Dark Phoenix. And those bad, like, you know, Fox movies. So like we need to give it some time before we reintroduce it. In the case of DC, Warner, they should have been figured that out. They should have been like, all right, like this is a priority. Like, how do we make this happen?
Yeah, but they could still reboot it. I think Green Lantern would be a key for it because he's in multiple places in space and the universe, and he could have dropped a lot of different Easter eggs. And even in the animated Justice League movie, he is the one that kind of brings a lot of people together, kind of ironically, and he gets the backstory of Bruce Wayne and everything out of Batman. So they could use him when they haven't used him for like, you know, like you said, like for so long.
Yeah. And, you know, it goes to show you while we're talking about these things, we're just spitballing, right? Like there should be people at DC, Warner Brothers, you know, before this merger went through that should have been in rooms talking about how they can get these things made. I love Peacemaker, but it's crazy that the first HBO Max original DC project was about a character no one knew before John Cena played him. And that just shows you the lack of vision and strategy. Yeah, it sucks. I mean, we've talked about it a lot, but, you know, it's like being, again, like fans, you know, it's short for fanatic. It's like talking in a bar every season after, again, going back to New York sports team, being a Knicks fan and being like, oh, wow, like we suck. Why do we have so much money? We're in New York. Why can't no one play here? That's what it feels like being a DC fan. So hopefully, you know, being a fan of the Badaboom podcast is not as bad as it is being a DC fan. And if you want more of this content, please follow and subscribe to podcasts wherever you listen, whether that be Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok, also Twitter, and engage with the discussion. You know, let us know, like, do you feel like the strategy has been working so far? Obviously, we land on the other side of that discussion, but let us know what you think.
Let us know what you think. Who do you think is going to be a key player for Warner Brothers to use to kind of reboot the DC universe to kind of be where it should have been all this time?
With that, bada boom.
Bada boom.